MMA Math is much like any good fighter the moment I bet money on them. Absolutely useless. But much like losing an ungodly amount of money on my favorite fighters because they are quote unquote dogs, and this time it will be different, MMA Math is quite simply fun. So I had the fun idea for a new series on this channel where I would use all of my scientific prowess, in which there isn't much, to create an MMA Math model to predict upcoming fights. And after we have a handful under our belt, we can truly answer how bad MMA Math is. Okay, so we're going to start with the main event of UFC 307, Alex Pereira versus Khalil Rountree Jr, which admittedly isn't the most useful fight to predict, but a good tester of the model. Here is the rundown of how we are going to predict this. We are going to look at a fighter's last 5 fights and give points. The fighter with the most points at the end wins. Simple, yeah? A fighter will get points for every victory relative to their opponent's UFC ranking. So beating a champion will get you 16 points, beating ranked 1 will get you 15, beating ranked 2 14, and so forth. Losing a fight nets you -2 points, and getting finished yourself nets you -3. You get an extra 5 points if you beat someone who your opponent has lost to in this 5-fight stretch. If your opponent has avenged that loss, you only get 1 point. You get an extra 5 points for a KO, TKO, or submission, and an extra point for a streak of finishes correlative to the length of the streak. For example, if you had a 3-fight win and finish streak, you'll get 15 points base for these finishes and an extra 3 for the length of the streak, making it 18 points. Doctors' stoppages will be judged on a case-by-case basis. And an extra 5 points if 2 or more of the judges give you every round in a decision victory. So, the issue here so far is that the model is skewed to the defending champion in title fights, just inherently by virtue of having to beat a current champion and defending against high-ranking opponents. Maybe that's accurate in predictions where the champ should probably be the favorite a good chunk of the time, but in any case, I've added a few extra bonus categories. If you are over 35, you lose 5 points, and an extra point on top of that for each year older than 35 you are. If you are undefeated in the UFC, you gain an extra 5 points. If you have a loss in the UFC but are undefeated in your last 5, you get 3 points. For the fight we are predicting, if you are fighting in your country of origin and your opponent is not from that same country, you get a cheeky dodgy judge bonus of an extra 5 points. This does not apply to the United States and their fighters. Okay, so let's start with Khalil Rountree Jr, who is undefeated in his last 5 fights, netting him 3 points off the bat. Going back 5 fights for Khalil takes us to September 4, 2021, on a UFC fight night headlined by Derek Brunson and Darren Till. Khalil took on Modestas Bukauskas as a slight underdog, and they were both still sitting outside of the top 15, netting Khalil only an extra 0.5 points. This fight was significant for having one of the most devastating TKOs in UFC history, with Khalil launching a Bangkok ready oblique kick to Modestas' knee, blowing it out. I feel like this deserves more than 5 points, but alas, that's 5 points for Khalil. 4 fights to go takes us to March 12, 2022, for UFC Fight Night Santos vs Ankalaev. Khalil, again as a slight underdog, took on unranked Carl Robertson, again netting him 0.5 points. This fight would net Khalil a Performance of the Night bonus, with again a relatively unique and brutal finish, body kicking Robertson so hard he stands up only to floor him again. This finish nets Khalil an extra 5 points, and spoiler alert, will end his finish streak at 2 for an extra 2 points. 3 fights back for Khalil takes us to the 29th of October 2022 for UFC Fight Night Kattar vs Allen. Khalil will be taking on his first ranked opponent during this stretch in 13th ranked Dustin Jacoby, as a slight underdog for the 3rd time in a row. This win would net him 3 points. Khalil would squeeze out a controversial split decision, with most fans, myself included, giving the first 2 rounds handedly to Jacoby, with Khalil taking the 3rd. But a win is a win in this model. 2 fights ago takes us to August 12, 2023 for UFC on ESPN Luque vs Dos Anjos. Khalil, despite being ranked in the top 15 for the first time in this stretch, takes on unranked Chris Dukakis. Khalil has finally been promoted from slight underdog to slight favourite and made good on that by starching Chris in 2 minutes and 40 seconds into the first round, earning him a Performance of the Night performance, and much more importantly gaining him 0.5 points for the unranked opponent and 5 for the finish. Finally, we are at Khalil's last fight on December 9, 2023 for the co-main of Song vs Gutierrez, where Khalil took on number 8 ranked Anthony Smith, netting him 8 points. Again, Khalil, and I swear every Khalil fight is just the same thing, would earn a performance bonus, putting Anthony Smith in full chicken dance mode in another scary finish, after 2 relatively close rounds, netting Khalil 5 points for the finish and 2 points extra for the 2-fight finish streak he takes into this fight. Okay, now on to Alex Pereira, and interestingly enough, to put into context just how active Poatan is, 5 fights for Alex is in between Khalil's 3rd and 4th fight. Honestly, just insane activity from the champion. 5 fights ago takes us to April 8, 2023, the main event of UFC 287, where Poatan took on Israel Adesanya in a rematch defending his middleweight title. Unfortunately for Poatan, he would lose by counter right 4 minutes and 21 seconds into the second round. Bad start for Poatan as he starts off on -3 points straight off the bat. 4 fights ago for Pereira takes us to July 29, 2023 for the co-main event of UFC 291 Poirier vs Gaethje 2, where Poatan, after losing his middleweight title, would move up a weight class and take on number 3 ranked former champion in Jan Blachowicz. In an extremely close fight that could have gone either way, Pereira would make a successful light heavyweight debut and earn a split decision victory, earning him 13 points. Going back 3 fights for Poatan lands us at November 11, 2023 for the main event of UFC 295, where after a successful weight class debut, Poatan would challenge for the light heavyweight title against champion Jiri Prochazka. After one of the coldest stare-downs in MMA history, Pereira would finish Jiri in just 4 minutes and 8 seconds into the second with a cheeky left hook into a volley of hammer fists and elbows, earning him 21 points. In his 4th fight in practically a calendar year, we go to April 13, 2024 for the main event of UFC 300, where Poatan would make his first defense of his light heavyweight title against a former champion who never lost his belt, Jamal Hill. Hill, who was ranked number 1, was absolutely no match for Poatan, getting finished 3 minutes and 14 seconds into round 1. Another 20 points for Pereira and also upping his finish streak to 2. Pereira's last fight occurred on the 29th of June 2024 for the main event of UFC 303 in a rematch against Jiri Prochazka. Jiri was the number 1 ranked contender at the time of the fight, and in quite similar fashion to the first fight, Poatan would finish Jiri 13 seconds into the second round with a head kick. 20 points for Poatan, and he takes a 3-point finish streak into the fight. Okay, so now we are up to date, and as we probably all predicted, Alex Pereira comes out as the winner. And even when we subtract the 7 points for age, Pereira is clearly the winner of this fight, and if you look at the bookmakers' odds, most people agree. So, admittedly, this isn't the best fight to start this series on, as there is such a clear favourite, and to be completely honest, Khalil probably shouldn't really even be in this fight, but Khalil kinda wins fights he shouldn't and wins fights he should. Plus, he has a famous win as an underdog against an elite former world champion kickboxer, where he knocked out Gokhan Saki, so just maybe Khalil can prove this model on basically everyone wrong come UFC 307. If you enjoyed this silly little video, please make sure you subscribe for more content. UFC 308 is looking like a much more interesting card to run this model on, and if people like this concept, I can do more fights throughout the card, not just the main event. But thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a good day.